Hello, it's June 8th, 2023, and we would like to welcome you to the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio. Um, uh, where this is where we talk about what we have learned in the past 15 to 20 years of experience so that it doesn't take you that long to learn it as well. I am your co-host, Judy, and I am here with my partner in peace and co-host, Kris Burke.
Hey, everybody.
And today's topic, learn to reconcile the inner critic or bully. I don't believe either one of us has any experience in that, do we?
No, of course not. We had to read about it.
Yes, we did. Extensive reading about that topic.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's funny. I got my hair cut this morning and I was driving back to get ready for the show and I was thinking, when did I first realize that I had an inner critic or a bully? And I thought to myself, I was really good and solid until about third grade. Third grade, the pediatrician recommended my mother put me on a diet. And then once that happened and I realized that I was different and she did everything she possibly could to make me feel special with my special calorie counting log and food journal, that was when I started looking at myself and thinking, okay, people think that this is not okay.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to hate looking at myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And then once I started to not love what I saw on the outside, I started to pick apart everything on the inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely relate to that. If you'd asked me before you just shared that, I would have said, I don't know. I feel like it was always there. But actually, I can totally relate to, I remember when I was told some people we hadn't seen, I was about 7, some people we hadn't seen in a while came up and they made a comment about I'd gotten a little pudgy or something. And yeah, I was kind of mortified. I mean, I'd never considered the possibility that there could be something wrong with me, unacceptable. And the way everybody around reacted to it, I could tell it was not okay that I had changed a little bit. And so I started to become kind of hyper vigilant about what do people think about me? Is it okay to do this? Right? Because if it's not okay to be this way, what are the other things that it's not okay to be? And so I think you just connected me with that. Yeah, that moment of like, yeah,
I'm not okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Never, I mean, are babies saying like, does my butt look big in this diaper? No. We walk around with our nice, cute, round tummy out there balancing off, as we learn to toddle across the floor. If we were subconscious, I think we'd never learn to walk. Self-conscious, rather. Self-conscious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And it's interesting that you said subconscious because then it just became a part of who I was.
Yeah.
It was probably, I don't know, it didn't take long for me to walk into a room, scan it to see if I was the biggest one there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that didn't stop until about 4 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
Even though I've done all this work on working with my inner critic and reprogramming that dialogue.
Yeah.
3 to 4 years ago, I finally stopped scanning the room to see if I was the biggest one in.
That's amazing. It's funny, when I was in high school, so as soon as I found out that it wasn't okay to be, whatever weight I happened to be at the moment, right? That it wasn't okay to express kind of where I was in that moment. I started being hyper vigilant about my weight. First, my weight, the scale every day on the scale. What do I weigh? And then that would set how I felt about myself for the day, my mood for the day. So I was always strategizing, how am I going to change, how am I going to fix this broken body? And so that over the course of high school, I put on about 50 pounds more than I am now. And my number one thing when I got out of high school, I just wanted to lose weight. That was
Mm.
it. The only thing I cared about was I was going to lose weight. And interestingly, so I worked on fixing myself. So I would try to force myself to diet, to exercise more. I could be like worse than any boot camp sergeant. You're gonna get up at 5 a.m. and you're gonna run for 5 miles. Then you're gonna come home and you're gonna eat air. This was like, so I would abuse my body in this way, try to control my body in this way, but actually my body needs food and it needed rest and it needed other things besides being controlled. And so we ended up in conflict with one another. So whenever I let my guard down, even a little bit, it was almost like my body would step forward and say, "Here's my chance. I can get some of the stuff I need." So I got into this real binge control yo-yo. And what happened when I got married and I got pregnant with my son is somehow it just hit me like, wow, my body is going to make a whole human being from scratch. Like, and I would say that to people and they'd be like, yeah, yeah, everybody, every woman's body does that. And I would be like, no, I'm not saying I think I'm the only one. I'm just saying all of a sudden I'm looking at my body as kind of miraculous. Like, how does it know how to do this? I mean, as a person, like, okay, go make me a baby. I don't where would you begin, right? And yet it does all of these intricate things. It makes a whole human being. So I started thinking about my body differently. Instead of wanting to control it and make it into what I thought it should be, I really wanted to learn from it. I wanted to understand, like, how do you know all of this stuff? And if I listened to you about what I ate or when I slept, or because the signals are actually all there, right? If I listened to what the signals my body was giving me and I just went along with those, what might that be like? And I shifted my focus from trying to fix the problem to really being in awe of this amazing you know, let's call it a biosuit or whatever we want to call it. But just that shift in perspective changed everything, and the weight went away, and without me trying is the whole point of that. And it wasn't really not to make it about the weight, but just to say that I had created a conflict and a struggle internally, which was expressing itself externally. And when I made peace with the inner critic or bully, yeah, I put the inner critic or bully on the shelf and I was like, wait a minute, I think we have something beautiful going on over here. Let's take a second look.
Mhm.
It resolved. Yeah.
So the question I have for you with that is, you said you put the inner critic or bully on the shelf. That was pertaining to your body and
Mhm.
your weight. Now, did that inner critic and bully show up in different ways?
Oh, everywhere. Sure. In my relationships, in my career, my house isn't clean enough today because I'd have a dog and you'd see a hairball float by and it's like, oh, how could you have a house with a hairball floating? I mean, it was relentless. And the one thing that became clear over time, that my inner critic wanted nothing to do with um, the natural way of being human, of like life being the way it is. It wanted to overcome the reality of being human, and what that is.
Well, think about the influences that we have.
Yeah.
Everything that society tells us is that you're broken. If you're not this, then we have something that you can do to make you that. We
Yeah.
have something that can fix you.
Yes.
So, how do we not feel like we aren't enough in every aspect of our lives?
Right.
And
Mm.
for me, you were able to come to that place where I'm going to decide to honor my body and listen to it and trust it.
Mhm.
For me, it took first awareness,
Yeah.
because that dialogue for me had gone to the subconscious. I didn't realize how much I beat myself up.
Mhm.
So just the awareness that it's there, inviting it forward. I mean, from the time my feet hit the floor in the morning till the time I fell asleep at night, constantly beating myself up for one thing or another.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't only body related, but that was the easiest target.
Yes. Yes.
So there was early on in my journey, there was this process I learned called catch and release, which
Mhm.
is just once you acknowledge that it's happening, you catch it, you declare, I'm not going to do this anymore, and let it go.
Mhm.
Sometimes you replace it with something more positive. I couldn't do that until I could legitimately feel more positive. I wasn't one to, blow smoke up anybody's ass. It
Either.
was, definitely not my own. So I couldn't say these things until I started to believe that maybe on some it's going to be true that I
Mhm.
can actually love this meat suit I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was, I mean, and people laugh because I'll say, when I first started the process, it was easily 300 to 400 times a day. I was catching and releasing
Yeah.
because it was just constant.
Yeah.
I would mispronounce a word, or I would say something that didn't make, and it was your big, why are you so stupid? Stop talking. Nobody wants to hear you.
Right.
The beatings were just endless.
Mhm.
So that was something that really helped me. Awareness was my first step. And
Mm.
then I had to be committed enough
Yeah.
to stick with it because, I had spent 40 something years with that programming in my head. It's not going to take 2 days for it to disappear, for
No.
me to reprogram it.
Yeah.
So, that was a process that worked for me early on.
Mhm.
And it started with my weight because that was my focus, my relationship with my body. But then it carried on. I didn't realize how much I beat myself up for everything.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the ways that I realized this was later, so like the weight thing sort of worked its way out, and wasn't even aware of what I'd done or how I'd done it. I mean, it all happened very subconsciously. But then later, I realized somebody walked by me, and I thought something like catty about. I remember it something like nice pants or something, you know, like
Mhm.
went through my head, and I kind of thought, what? Like, what's that? Because I thought of myself as, I'm a nice person, right? I deserve good things because 'cause I'm a nice person. And I heard myself say that, and I thought, "Whoa, whoa, what was that?" And I started listening to to the thoughts that were going, and there was a lot of snarky. There was a lot of snarky externally, and all of that snark was the same internally.
Mhm. If not worse, internally.
Probably worse internally.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let that judge come forward. Ooh, ooh, all right, judgy.
Yeah. We can be super judgy, and when I read a book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, which was, just really I was at a crossroads, and it got me going that way, which was much more toward where I'm glad I went. Uh, but they were talking about the power of your thoughts and how your unconscious thoughts, what you're carrying around in your unconscious was shaping those thoughts every day. So it was how important it was to be positive. And I so started paying attention, and I realized, wow, I just don't have anything positive to say. I really didn't. I mean, I could be nice to people. Like I could say a nice thing. I could sit with my kids and cuddle them.
Mhm.
But the tone of my speaking to myself and to other people was like always looking for a problem.
Mhm.
Right? It was like always people would say, "How are you doing?" "Well, oh my God, this morning, the dog did this." Or it was like, "Oh, there's a problem in the accounting department," or whatever it was. I was really focused on the problems.
Mhm. Yeah, people
Um,
asked me how I was doing, and my response was working to get through the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So I started a mantra because I got so frustrated. I was like, I don't even know what positive thoughts would sound like. I mean, this was for real.
Hmm.
So I started chanting happiness, peace, success, and love. And I would just chant it over and over and over again, trying to fill up my head with this positive thing so that none of the negative stuff could come through.
That's a declaration. I mean, now we know that's a declaration to the universe. That is what you are inviting into your life.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sarcastic. Sarcastic. I was I turned learned very early, be the funny fat kid. Because when you're the
Mm.
funny fat kid, you crack the jokes before anybody else can.
Yeah.
And then it turned into sarcasm, and it was survival
Yep.
for me. If it was only the dialogue was only as funny in my head as it was being projected out to the public, then
Right.
yeah. So it was, and it's interesting. It's taken me back to our map.
Mhm.
When the inner critic is in charge, when the bully is driving the bus, what zone are we in?
1.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or 2, we can be in 2. Um,
I heard 1.5.
yeah. Yeah, right on that bridge.
Rattle in the
Yeah. Yeah.
mud.
Right. Yeah, it's true. Um, that that bully almost feels like tries to keep you from stepping into your truth, right? So we've been talking a lot, I don't think on this show, but this week in our classes, it's come up a lot talking about whether or not noticing whether you and the people around you, whether what you say and what you do is matching,
Mhm.
right? And the
Yeah.
inner critic plays a big. Do you want to talk about that a little bit just to like because people might not know. Maybe you weren't in the 10 hours of discussion about this we had this week.
Well, it's funny because there's a bunch of memes all over Facebook and everything that say pay attention, not only pay attention to what people say, pay attention to their actions because their actions speak their truth.
Yes.
And if their words aren't aligning with their actions, it tells you everything you need to know.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we talk a lot about being in alignment.
Mhm.
And I know early on when I started all this, everybody's the positive talk. Like I was just saying, I'm trying to reprogram that inner critic, that bully. So when I can start to believe there's something worthy of me speaking positive about myself, I would do that. But it can't be filled with fluff. And
Mm-mm.
some people, fake it till you make it. That's something I used to say too. Fake it till you make it. Um, but I had a belief that alignment meant positive, light and love, and blah, blah, blah. No negative can exist when you're in alignment. Well,
Right.
that is some major bullshit.
Yeah.
Alignment is honoring all of the emotions that you have and
Mm.
allowing yourself to feel them. That's
Mm.
an alignment. It's
Yes.
when you try to stuff them down, deny they exist, ignore them, put them on a shelf and hide them in a dusty spot. When you allow your emotions to flow, no matter
Mhm.
what they are, they move through you. And that's what they're supposed to do. That is alignment.
Yes. Yes. So it's when what you're thinking and feeling is going to drive your actions.
Hmm.
No matter what you say to people, no matter what we present to people, no matter what we wish were true, what we're thinking and feeling is what's going to drive our actions. And so, if what we're thinking and feeling is also what we say, is also what we present, is also what we tell ourselves is true about ourselves, we don't give ourselves another fluffy story, but we say, yeah, right now, this is where I am,
Hmm.
right? Then it will process and change.
Hmm.
But when we deny it and stuff it down, we just get more and more out of touch and more disconnected. And this is when the inner critic steps in
Yeah.
and takes over and wreaks havoc.
Yes. it's showtime. Here we go.
Yeah, if you're disconnected from your truth, you don't have a foundation to support yourself, to not defend, but to just you're not empowered. Yeah.
Yes. And you had mentioned being at peace.
Mhm.
You know, it's difficult to be in a space of true peace if you're not acknowledging truth.
Right.
I have a friend that said, she'll say something sarcastic or flip it and be like, I'm an asshole, but I'm at peace with it. That is the truth of
Yeah.
her. Okay. One of those,
Yeah.
oh, take me or leave me. But
Right.
you know,
Right.
and when we feel the power of being who we really are, allowing ourselves to do the ugly cry and show up in vulnerable spaces and just be and understand that we're not broken.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with us.
Mhm.
If we are being true to ourselves, we allow ourselves to show up in our relationships and the world in that truth. And there's so much power in truth,
Ah, yeah.
so much power in truth.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you don't be real with yourself, how can you be real with others?
Right. Right. And we talk about being magnetic, right? How we'll attract into our world or we'll notice, those things that really fit us, that are the people who kind of we would light up by spending time together. Like, Judy and I love spending time, our community, like we all love spending time together. But if I weren't being honest with myself when we met, I told her what my dream was, that I wanted to build a place in the world where people could come and be real and be celebrated and support one another and not be snarking and not be competing and all of those things. And I was honest about, and I don't know how to do that. Like right now at this moment, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to do that, but I know that's what's in my heart, right? And you said,
Let's do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But if I had said that I did know how,
Mhm.
right, then I would have been out of alignment. And, until I got honest with myself about, I don't know what that looks like. I know pieces of a feeling I'm going for, but I don't know how to do it because we've never done it before. We didn't grow up in that environment. So we knew that we were going about creating an environment through trial and error and inspiration, hopefully. And, yeah,
And there have been plenty of times where we're like, oh, this is crazy. This is
yeah.
never going to unfold. This isn't going to happen. You know, um, I
And what
struggle
is,
with
yeah,
the truth of me. People struggle with the truth of them. People struggle with the truth of what's happening in the world. And yes, and that's why it's so important that we understand that when the words and the actions and the heart align, we attract all of those things
yeah,
that we've ever wanted and the people that can help support us to
yeah.
get it. Because, you know, life is supposed to be win win win.
Mhm.
There isn't supposed to be winners and losers,
That's right.
you know. And that's what we believe. And when you stand in the truth of you and who you are, and you can work with that inner critic and that bully to show them that you're a beautiful spark of God,
Hmm.
and God, universe, soul, whatever you'd like to call that higher power,
Hmm.
is a part of you, and
Hmm.
it loves being a part of you. We are here to love and be loved. So when we can work with that inner critic and get them to start changing that dialogue, and we can see how beautiful and what purpose our life has, we attract people that see that in us as well.
Yeah.
And we wind up feeding one another and supporting one another, because it's not like, for me, I have not yet had the bully completely disappear.
No.
The bully still shows up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I have a fantastic support system
Hmm.
that if I don't call myself out on it, they will be like, hey, I think you need to pay attention to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, hmm, it was the same. Yeah. So I think we're actually going to commercial break. So this is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, and we will be right back.
And we're back. This is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, and we are live on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network.
Yeah. Woohoo.
And today's topic has been how learn to reconcile the inner critic or the bully.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we left off, we were talking about alignment and how
Yeah.
important it is to stand in your truth.
Mm-hmm.
How if one is so buried, like we have talked about before. I started all this not even knowing how dark my life was.
Mm-hmm.
So if one doesn't have awareness of just how heavy the beatings of the inner critic or bully are, what is one way that they can start to identify and bring to the forefront that internal dialogue?
Yeah. So paying attention, just listening to yourself. How are you talking to yourself? And to keep it really simple, to think about, does this make me feel peaceful? Does this make me feel good about being me? Or does this make me feel defective, like I'm a problem that needs solving? Just notice the way you feel when you talk to yourself. And this is the critical piece. And then when you notice, if you hear yourself criticizing or bullying yourself, just say, huh, I see that, and that's okay. Because this is one of these places we get stuck. And I think a lot of people get stuck in personal and professional development is that they decide, okay, I'm going to become this whole other person. And I'm going to just start acting like this whole other person, this concept that I have in my mind, and pretend that I can sort of, dispose of who I am today because there's nothing there that matters anyway. And we go over here and we start, play acting. And then whenever we hear ourselves um, saying or doing something that we think we shouldn't be doing in this new persona, then we criticize ourselves. And when we attack ourselves, what happens? We go right to zone one, right? So now mind's not working. We're beating up on ourselves. Our energy level gets really low. And so now we think, oh, I'll never be this person who's comfortable in their skin. I'll never be this person who's living a life that lights them up because I just had this experience where I tried and I ended up depressed, or I ended up, I went out and drank too much, or I did any of the things that we do. It didn't work.
It didn't work. I tried and it didn't work.
Yes. So therefore, it's not possible for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's where the inner critic or bully gets really excited because, like, haha, I've got you now. I've got you on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you're believing the lies of your imperfection, the lies that you're full of problems that need solving. That's what the inner critic or bully narrates all the time. Is just they're parroting things they've heard throughout your life that were lies at the time and continue to be.
And,
right?
and it's a conflict because our true self knows that it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the conflict lies.
Right.
And that's when you were speaking earlier about conflict. As long as there's a conflict, there can be no resolution.
Right.
And, a problem can't be solved in the same energy in which it's created.
Exactly.
So when we feel ourselves here and we're in zone one, that's why it's so important that you said identify it and say, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the second you do that, there's no conflict.
Right. And in the absence of conflict, when you're at peace with what is, with what's happening, with who you are right now and where you are, and you're appreciating your willingness to like show up and try new things, when you're appreciating that, the inner critic's got nothing.
Mm-mm. And you're being real. You're being real with yourself.
Mhm.
Okay, I see that, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And in seeing it and declaring that you're okay with it, it creates that you have a choice. It's not, I have to choose either or right now. I'm at peace with it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And moving forward, should I choose to do something different? I can. If not, okay.
Mhm. And how often do we notice, like students say it all the time, just by noticing what you're doing, that will stop happening
Mhm,
or it will start, happening more. I mean, depending on whether or not it's something you want more of in your life or less of in your life, but just
mhm.
noticing it in the moment and going, ah, there it is. It will resolve as long as we don't grab onto it and make a big story, make a big drama out of it. Right?
I just heard grab into it and choke the life out of it.
Yeah, so funny. I remember somebody recently talking about the difference between thoughts and thinking, and how a thought could come through your mind, like my dog barked, right? Like my dog just barked. She's a dog, and sometimes dogs bark, right? So my dog barked, and I thought, oh, my dog barked, and that was it. But in the past, my dog barked. Oh my God, my dog barked. Everybody heard my dog bark, right? And it would have turned into this whole like, and then my dog actually is very sensitive to my energy, would have felt my growing anxiety, and she might have gone on a full out woofing streak in reaction to that. And it all would have been a self fulfilling prophecy. But staying in that place of, because we practice now. So being at peace with whatever is, because what are you going to do? It already happened. Right. So she barked and I just let the thought pass through, and that was the end of it.
Yes, and this week we've been talking a lot about how, animals are sensitive to energy. They're a lot more sensitive to energy than we are.
Yeah.
And how we can, if we're feeling some kind of way, we can look to our animals and see how they're feeling,
Hmm.
you know. And you have practiced beautifully with your dog and your horses and experiencing what you being at peace does for them.
Yeah. It's
And a
pretty
lot of that
amazing.
has to do with, I mean, and that's what we're talking about. That inner critic gets roaring and you acknowledge it. I'm at peace with that. Kris, you want to share some of your experiences with the dog and your horses because it's beautiful.
Thank you. I've actually had the opportunity to work with some high school students this week on learning how when we show up in zone one energy, which a lot of students are in a lot of the time these days. They're telling me this, I'm not guessing. They've got a lot of anxiety, they've got depression. So they would show up just the way they're feeling all the time. And actually, that felt normal to them. And we would be with the horses, and the horses are kind of like, what's happening? What's going on? They're looking for the danger because they can feel. Now, horses don't have words, so nor do dogs. So they don't have a conflict. What they're thinking the way they think, which is usually kind of in pictures, we know our dogs and horses think when they're like, hey, can you get me a carrot? Or, they're thinking about this thing. I want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't know how they think, but I imagine that it's a lot of images and whatnot, but they don't lie. They can't be out of alignment because what they're thinking and feeling, they're going to act out, they're going to express it in the world. And they're also going to mirror the energy they're picking up from us. Because as herd animals, horses in particular, it's very important that the herd be connected energetically and that they're picking up on whatever's happening. Because if there's a horse on the edge of the herd who sees a predator approaching, survival literally depends on every horse there being connected enough to the herd that they get the signal early enough to get out of there. Right? So they're very sensitive. So if anybody shows up in that, danger energy, that fear energy, the horses immediately start trying to figure out what's the problem, what's the danger, because they want to know which way to run,
Mhm.
basically. So the kids showed up and had, they had their normal anxiety, a little bit of depression, a little bit of insecurity, like wanting to kind of disappear into the chair, And after just a few days of learning how to become peaceful and shift their energy and noticing what happened with the horses, the change with the horses, after just the week, it was like different kids walked in today. It was incredible, right? And doing it from the standpoint of we're going to do it for them, right? Because if they feel safe with us, then it will be more fun to be with them. We'll feel safe with them. It's this positive cycle that we can create. So it's not about, what teenager wants to work on personal development. I mean, it's, how boring is that? But because they need more experience, I think, a lot of the times. But when you make it about, you can make this, these big, beautiful horses feel really safe with you and connected with you by shifting your energy. Well, now that's something they want to practice. And when they saw how that could change the way the horses were with them, the idea that by changing your energy, by really owning your energy, you can change how everybody interacts with you.
Mhm.
Not control, not control or manipulate. You just show up in a relaxed, honest energy. Not only is your inner critic or bully more silent, but so are theirs.
Mhm. Yeah, when you have peace within yourself, it radiates out,
Mhm.
and other people can feel that. And I know, you know, I would think people that are listening to this, that if you have random people walk up to you in a grocery store and they just start talking to you, you have an energy that's open and
Yeah.
inviting.
Mhm.
So this level of peace that you can come to when you've worked with the inner critic and the bully, um, that invites peace for everybody around you.
It does.
It doesn't power over and doesn't bring the peace.
No.
That peace is available
Yes.
should people want to join you.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure you do, I notice that people, they'll catch your eye. There's
Mhm.
just this moment of shared acknowledgement, like, hello, fellow human.
I see.
Um, I see you.
I
Yes,
see you.
I
Mhm.
see you. Yeah.
Yes,
See
and
you
so
and
many.
I honor you, right? Because there's an honoring that's natural when you see another person who's being human and is willing to share that moment of, well, here we are being human with a stranger. There's something beautiful about that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so funny. I just had the image of everybody looking down at their phones.
Mhm.
Just start recognizing. Don't look down at your phone so much. Look up and engage with people.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because that was like the biggest change that I noticed in the students
Hmm.
is that people who would not make eye contact, who really were clearly trying to become invisible and didn't want to speak and didn't want to make eye contact because, they had such anxiety. During it was actually 2 weeks, last week and this week, working with the horses, we said, you don't have to speak if you don't want to.
Hmm.
Do what's right for you. A couple of girls got into a little bit of a giggling fit. And I said, hey, giggle away. It's healthy. You're not exactly pulling out sabers and stabbing people. So I think we can overlook this, right? Like let's lighten up. Let's allow ourselves to be human. Let's just explore. What's it like if we give ourselves permission to be who we are?
Hmm.
And giggling actually can often be a reaction to intense energy coming up, to intense nerves coming up. And if you giggle, you can actually release that energy and then achieve peace,
Hmm.
right? And the thing I noticed this morning is that they walked in and everybody their shoulders were back, their heads were up, they were making eye contact, they would smile when your eyes met.
That's
I get goosebumps just saying that, right? Because maybe it seems too subtle, or it's like the inner critic might say, oh, that's just because, whatever. Like, oh, they got out of bed feeling better today or whatever. But I could tell, no, they're feeling a little more comfortable in their skin right now
Mm-hmm.
because they learned that it was possible. And anybody who explores that finds out, oh, this is much better.
Yeah. They learned it was safe to look up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's safe to engage.
Yes.
And it's safe to be seen.
Mm. Actually, and that's a perfect segue into it is, and I talked to them a little bit about having boundaries,
Mm.
right? Because it is safe to share what's really precious to you with people who will support you unconditionally, who will celebrate what's precious in you, who will see your light and say, "I love your light." Right? I want to applaud your light. I think that's beautiful, and I recognize the light in you, and I know it's in me, and I appreciate that you're willing to applaud what's in me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where joy comes from. It's from applauding and celebrating and supporting one another. Um, yeah, so I think I completely lost my
uh,
train of
well,
thought.
we're running out of time,
Oh,
actually. We need to wrap up.
we do? Oh, well, then good. Good. That was the universe going, yeah, we're going to shut her down now. Boom. Let's talk about the auditorium next time. Boundaries. It's
Okay,
important. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And where can they find us, Kris?
They can find us at masterfulu.com. That's masterfulu.com.
Excellent. Excellent. So be at peace. Find peace with your inner critic, and you will
Yeah,
be shocked at how things move forward.
absolutely.
This is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. I'm Judy Forder, and Kris Burke and I are signing off for the day. We'll
Thanks,
see you next week.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Judy.
Thank you, Kris.